I mean, I think it was coincidental. That is the best way to work.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Portsmouth School Board meeting for April 13th, 2010. I'd like to ask the superintendent to please take the roll call.
Ann Mayer.
Here.
Carol Chelman. Kent LePage.
Here.
Dexter Legg.
Here.
Ann Walker.
Here.
Mitch Schulman.
Here.
Rebecca Emerson.
Here.
Tom Martin.
Here.
Leslie Stevens.
Here.
Lisa Sweet.
Here.
Linda Brulette.
Here.
Bill Boynton.
Here.
Very good, thank you. So if I could ask everyone to rise for a moment of silence, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so to begin, I'd like to ask for a motion to accept the minutes from March 9th, the ones that were sealed by the board.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on those that we talk about? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to accept the March 9th regular school board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, edits? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. A motion to accept the March 23rd non-public school board minutes sealed by unanimous vote.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And lastly, the March 23rd regular school board meeting minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on to the public comment period, one person has signed up. So if there are other people in the audience who would like to speak, even though you haven't signed up after the first person goes, by all means, raise your hand and then come forward. So we'll begin. So Zolita Morgan, if I pronounced that right. Thanks. State your name and your address, and we'll usually time you for about 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Zolita Morgan, and I live on 39 Richards Avenue. Good evening, Chair and school board members. Thank you for your time. I'd like to ask this board to hold all meetings in City Hall. This is a very tough year in our budget, as you've seen, and next year probably does not promise to be any easier. The school department holds the biggest piece of the city budget, so why not be proactive, on a going forward basis, and increase the visibility of over school board business and deliberations. Parents have been networking. They have joined blog groups, have written letters to newspapers, have sent emails, have contacted city councilors and school board members, but that's not enough. During the last joint PTA meeting where the 3 PTAs were gathered in Little Harbor, one parent stood up and asked the school board and the superintendent what was the strategy in place to reach out to all stakeholders in order to raise knowledge, awareness, that a strong and adequately funded education is as important as any other initiative to sustain Portsmouth as a viable community. Holding our meetings in City Hall is crucial and is strategic to support efforts in that direction and ultimately achieve that goal. I understand that there is a desire, and it's very important to have the connection with the school staff and the kids, but I think the best time to achieve that is when the schools are open and the kids are there and the staff is there, not, after 7 o'clock. 1 minute's up?
You have 1 minute left.
Oh, I have 1 more minute, thank you. The televised meetings at City Hall would cost nothing on your budget, would highly maximize reaching out efforts to all stakeholders in our city. We need more than parents to support budget efforts, and would create a much broader dialogue between this board and our community. So you have the ball, you have the goal, you're facing the goal, all you have to do is kick the ball and score. So I hope you move your meetings to the City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to get up and speak? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public commentary portion and move to, we have some special presentations tonight. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Yes, welcome Nancy Modern and many children who've attended over the February vacation a trip to Spain. Come on up and welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Here I am. Good evening, everybody. We took in February 2 trips to France and Belgium, and also there was a Spanish exchange trip. And so we're here to talk about that. And I, as chair, just want to remark that the hours and the extraordinary planning and hard work of Immaculate Niwamageni, Jeanette McDonald, Tara Hebert, and Helene Wemple was amazing, and that in these sort of turbulent times, these are bright lights. This was amazing. They were great little examples of what it is to be a global citizen as they traveled. And so we have some pictures, and the students will come up and speak to you.
Hi, my name is Tessa Fagan, and I'm a junior at Portsmouth High School.
My name is Catherine Chisholm, and I'm a junior at Portsmouth High School.
My name's Kevin Dwyer. I'm a senior at Portsmouth.
And I'm Hannah Feintuck, and I'm also a senior at Portsmouth.
I'm going to talk about the family time we had in Spain. For me, that was the best experience of the whole entire trip. And I think most of us can say that all of the families there were just so hospitable and welcomed us so warmly. And I think all of us literally just felt like part of their family. Every day while we were in Spain, like the biggest part of the family time was the lunchtime for them. And everybody would sit down for a meal and you would talk, and it was like about 45 minutes long, and the whole family sat down for that time. And for most of us, the parents and the siblings of the families we were staying with didn't speak any English, so we had to converse in Spanish, and that was a big part of the learning experience because it pushed us to really communicate in Spanish with them. And also, a lot of the families took us on trips to different towns around Cathedral where we stayed. I went to Sevilla, and I also actually went to Portugal, which is really nice because I got to go to 2 countries in one trip. So the family time was just really wonderful, and it was just a big, big part of the trip. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the field trips we went on each day. We would usually go to school for a little while, and then my personal favorite part of the day was going on the field trips. And we went on a different field trip each day, and it was definitely a different experience to each place we went to. For example, we went to a cheese factory, which is not something you would likely do here, and we went to see a lot of the very, very historic parts of the area we were living in. And personally, one of my favorite experiences from throughout the field trips was we went to a place where they make pottery. It's been in their family for hundreds of years, the business, and we got to meet this man and his brother who do the pottery every day. It's how they make their living. And I actually got to throw on the wheel because I'm taking pottery at Portsmouth High School currently. So they said, oh yeah, sure, go on the wheel. And it was definitely a highlight. Very, very cool to do that. And I think we all definitely enjoyed the field trips a lot. It's a good thing.
Thank you.
I'll talk about the school, which goes from preschool up to 18-year-olds. And actually, Hannah and I got to go to a preschool class where they were about 3 years old, and there was one teacher for 25 students, and he had complete authority over all of them, which I thought was impressive. Another thing I got to do was I got to go to Portugal as well, and I happened to run into Tessa while I was walking down the street. I was amazed by, but my favorite part of the experience was definitely the family who since I signed up late for the program, I hadn't met before, but when they greeted me in their house, they had a sign that said "Welcome, Kevin" in English, and I was completely welcomed by it. But I loved the experience and would definitely suggest anybody else try it. Thank you.
And I think it's cool that Kevin was just telling me he's also spending next year at Suffolk University in Madrid because he liked it so much. So I thought that was cool. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about the schools because that was a really major part of it. We were on vacation for a week of this trip, but we were at school every day. So, I mean, it was way more fun than what I would be doing at home, but we were still in school. So we got to sit in on classes, which is really interesting, all different levels. They pretty much said, you know, our doors are open, pick a class you want to come to, whether that's with your homestay brother or sister or just something you want to do. So I got to go to an English class with my sister, who is 18 years old, and that was boring and I didn't understand anything, but it was interesting to see how the class was, you know, conducted. And then I also got to go to English classes with younger kids, and then they interviewed us and asked us all sorts of questions. And that was really interesting to see the differences and talk to the students because they came here. And it was interesting because a lot of them said they much preferred the way Portsmouth does it to the way they have it in Spain. The pictures? So I guess we're going to start with pictures. That was my homestay family, Rebecca, Esther, and my brother Alex, or Ale. And you guys can chime in. It rained a lot, but that was okay with us. We didn't really mind. And so this is just like a typical street we took this picture out of a bus that we were traveling on to get to a field trip. That's Emily and Aaron. We were going through the old part of Cathedral, which, I mean, we all think that Strawberry Bank is old, but this is old. There are like museums around it. We spent a lot of time museum hopping. So I feel like I've just seen so much art recently. That was the view of the city outside of a window. You want to do this?
And this is the guy we learned pottery from and got to see him do his thing, and it was incredible. Probably one of the best people I've ever done pottery for, but, you know, it's been in his family for quite a while, so it comes with the trade.
So there she is.
There I am. Pictures to prove it.
The wheel was 500 years old. Wow. That's the brother who makes pottery. We followed him to another place where he does the painting, and we all crowded around to watch. And he does the design. We were asking him questions because we also did a project for this where we videotaped and interviewed like either a tour guide or, in this case, the artisan, and he just kind of makes up what he's doing as he goes. That's La Vieja, which is like the statue in the middle of town, and me with my homestay sister. And that's at the school, and those are some Spaniards that also came here.
This is just like an auditorium in Merida, I think, which was really old, and I think they still have performances there, which was really cool. And that's the same place. Yeah, amphitheater. We got to ride horses, and actually for my project, I had to take video of like the nature there, and had to take video from the horse, which was pumping. Yeah, it was difficult.
That's why they invented image stabilization.
This is a cathedral in Guadeloupe, which is one of the excursions we took. So picture another one in Guadeloupe in the church.
Oh, this is we're both in advanced placement European history, so of course, like, we got really excited over things like this. And this was Pizarro's house, and so we were freaking out, like taking pictures for our teacher, and went to a Rembrandt museum. And I was like, I was just reading about all of this. And this is the project that I did with Jordan, because we all had to have a project at the end that we presented. And those are my house where I lived. And my sister, Rebecca, who I still talk to.
Wow.
That was great.
That was
Well
great.
done.
Thank you very, very much.
Could I have a Dexter comment?
Yeah, sure.
So I wasn't going to say this, but I'd like to publicly take the opportunity to thank Nancy Modern and brag a bit for my daughter, Meredith, who took Spanish several years with Nancy. She's now a junior, and she's spending her semester abroad in Granada, Spain. And we had an opportunity to visit her several weeks ago. She's in a homestay, fluent Spanish. She's taking her classes in Spanish. And I just have to publicly thank Nancy for inspiring her. And what I would tell you guys is to listen to Ms. Modern. She really is good, and she knows what she's talking about. And it's a terrific future. So in all seriousness, thank you so much.
Oh, my God.
No, thank you.
OK, ça c'est le moment pour les Français. Hein?
Okay. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Harvey, and I'm a senior at Portsmouth High School.
Hi, I'm Susan Harvey, and I'm a sophomore at Portsmouth High School.
Hi, I'm Christina Helm, and I'm a junior at Portsmouth High School.
I'm Sasha Nagata. I'm a junior at Portsmouth High School.
Hi, I'm Casey Knopf, and I'm a senior at Portsmouth High School.
Hi, I'm Will Clarkson. I'm a junior at Portsmouth High School.
Okay, I'll go. Our trip was a little different than the Spanish trip. It was more about just seeing parts of, we went to Belgium and to France. We went to Brussels and Paris. And it was more just about seeing everything we could and speaking as much French as we could. And yeah, I don't know. Should we just go into the pictures? This is the first museum we went to. It was an African museum, and it was just, those were the elephants outside. And are there more pictures? Yeah, those are the steps going in. That was the outside view. It was really pretty outside. What were those called? Okay, those are, we took those trains in to get here from Brussels.
Now, did you guys stay with families?
No.
No, okay.
We
So
stayed in
you-
hostels, which
very
was really cool.
Different experience, okay.
I personally, I like staying in the hostels. I'd never stayed in a hostel before, and I thought it was a really great experience in itself because not only did we meet people from different parts of Europe and around the world that spoke French, we also met people from like Los Angeles. So we got to talk and meet like a whole different group of people, not only from the place we were staying, but from all over the world. And yeah, Scotland too, like really all over the place. And back to the tram, was it? Train, I don't, whatever. I also, that was one of the funnest parts of the trip for me was just traveling because we got to go on the TGV, which is like a really, really fast train. And just the different transportation in Europe, I'd never been before, so it was really interesting just to see the way they get around.
Also on the topic of meeting people, it was really cool. One night we all opened our windows of the hostel and we looked out and you could see heads popping out and everyone was just yelling like, "Where are you from?" And that was a really cool way of like meeting people. We actually met people from Scotland, and we still talk to a couple or one of them on Skype and stuff. So it's really cool.
Okay, so this is in Brussels. That's a waffle place that you can see right there. They're called Gaufres in Belgium. We're going to the Grand Place, which is sort of like the big touristy area in downtown Brussels. This is in the Grand Place. That actually, okay, it looks like a church. It's actually a hotel, which I found out the next day.
Yeah, we know that.
It's so tall though, but it's just this really cute little square. I'm sure there'll be more pictures, but yeah, there are all these old buildings, and it's like cobblestone streets, and it's tons of like chocolatiers are around here. I think you'll see one.
It's gorgeous when the sun shines on it.
Yeah.
It's all gold plated.
Gold plated, it's like shining everywhere. It's really pretty.
It's amazing. Yeah, like they sort of said for the Spanish trip, one thing that struck me is how much older everything is. I mean, you could see on one of those pictures of like 1650s or something, which you just don't get around here. Here, this is in the chocolatier we went to visit. You can see some of these amazing things they made out of chocolate, and there's some of the molds. And we got a demonstration from from the chocolatier there, showing us how he mixed the different chocolates and made the chocolate, which is so well known in Belgium and I guess around the world.
The shows how we're going to places. We were going on a train, I think, in there, and we're just, we found out how to travel by ourselves. So that was a really important part. And that's a train, a TGV, I think.
That was at the big, remember the big station?
Brussels Midi.
Oh, yeah. Train station. Where's this?
That's the market.
Oh, yeah. We got to go to a market and we got to bargain and get all these things, and it helped us practice our French because we had to bargain in French and they didn't understand English, so it helped.
In this picture, the girl in the middle of that couch that you can see, she's sort of holding a camera. She was actually an exchange student at Portsmouth High School, not last year, but the year before. I had Latin class with her and stuff, so it was interesting. She came because she had stayed with, I think, Madame MacDonald when she was here. So she came and met up with us, and she hung out in Brussels and everything, and it was just really nice to see her again. And she's actually going to be coming back to the United States, I think it's her future plans and stuff. So it's just interesting. You can see how all the sort of connections that you make whenever you go somewhere sort of can continue to help you and sort of change your life after.
Our guide around Brussels and Paris was Nicolas, who Madame knew, and he and I were best friends. And I don't know, he just brought us everywhere, and we couldn't have done anything without him. Well, we could have, but he was really helpful. And this is when we went to the UN. EU. The EU. I'm sorry. They're very similar. And those are all the flags. This is the TGV.
This is in the Paris station.
Yeah, in the Paris station.
We just got to Paris.
Mm-hmm.
After a 3-hour delay, we finally got there. They, there had been an accident or something on the tracks, or something had happened a couple of days before, but the trains were still sort of lagging behind when we got to our train station. So we were sort of hanging out in the, what is it called, the Gare train station for a few hours waiting. But we got there, so that's good.
And how many days were you there?
We were in Brussels for 4 days, in Paris for 3 days, and then we went to Mont Saint-Michel for another day. We went on a day trip there.
Great.
And this, obviously, I mean, Eiffel Tower. It was really fun because we saw it like sparkle. I don't know if there are any pictures. Oh, here we go, at the top. There you guys are. And they were really pretty sights. I mean, of course, Paris at night, City of Lights and all that. The sun, right? Is that something? I didn't go there.
Yeah, we didn't go there.
Okay. This was the Musée de Pompadour, which is a Pompadour museum, and it had all the modern art. So we got to see all the French artists and artists all around the world, and we got to experience French art. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's Pompadour too, and they have many floors, so we could go from one floor to another, and it has different kinds of arts and different artists on each floor. Yeah. Yep, the Louvre. You want to talk about it?
Well,
Okay, so here's the Louvre. If you saw the Da Vinci Code, you probably recognize that. Once again, so much older than any museum you'd see around here. I thought it was really cool to see like all the really old art, and it was in this really old palace, but then there was also this sort of modern thing, which is, I don't know, really cool. And then here, this is the upside down pyramid inside. And then now we're at Notre Dame, which is, you can't really tell as well from the pictures, but it's really enormous. And it's also old, and the stained glass is all really beautiful. It was pretty awesome.
Okay. This is all the Palace of Versailles. We went there for a morning. It was raining, but we made the best of it. It was mostly inside, so it was okay. It was really, really interesting. I didn't take modern European history, but I mean, from other classes that I've had, Versailles is obviously extremely important with the World Wars and the treaty and everything. So it was so interesting to be there and to see everything in the Hall of Mirrors and all that. So it was just a very, I guess, it was really interesting from a French sort of standpoint, being there and being immersed in the language, but it was also really interesting from just a general observer type. We didn't have to know French to be completely stunned and, I guess, amazed by France and the trip. So I don't know if one of you guys wants to keep talking.
This is us ice skating, and there's only 6 of us that found an ice rink in the middle. We were just on our own in Paris, and we found this ice rink, and we just couldn't pass up a chance to ice skate in Paris. So it was only €5, yeah. So it was a lot of fun, and we got tons of great pictures and videos of some of us falling. And the funny thing was, the entire ice rink was covered in water, so if you fell, you were just soaked for the rest of the entire time you were ice skating. But it was a really great time, and it was just a really cool thing to say. I ice skated in Paris, in the middle of the city, so.
Wow. Well, we'd like to thank you. I don't know if you have more. I'm sorry.
Mont Saint-Michel, I think, which is really cool.
Okay.
Okay, here. So this is Mont Saint-Michel, which is pretty iconic, I think, as far as French culture and stuff. And it was originally just a monastery, I guess, and then it became this castle, and they built it up over the centuries. And now they really capitalized on the whole castle thing with selling all these night figurines and stuff in all the gift shops.
Right.
And it was just really amazing to see all of the just architecture and everything. And then the views from the very top of it, where we got to go, were amazing, of the French countryside.
Okay, so I was sort of nominated to do the conclusion. These last couple pictures were with Musée d'Orsay, and it's a impressionist art, so we got to see Monet and that famous Van Gogh self-portrait there. So it was just interesting, I guess that's the end of our slides, but just sort of in conclusion, I know this has been kind of long, I'm sorry, but it was so interesting to be in France and Belgium. And yes, we did the touristy things. We went and we saw the Eiffel Tower, and I mean, you saw the pictures, we saw all those fun things that you expect people to see. But we also saw a different side of Brussels and of Paris, because Madame Immaculée has family and friends that live there, and so we got to go and have dinner or lunch with her friends and see the real cities, not just the touristy cities. So it was just a really interesting and fun experience, and I loved it, and I'm sure everybody else did too. So thanks.
Wow, thank you very much.
Evening, fellow school board members. Here with Nat Hurd, the teacher of TV media tonight, and we have a couple of things I want to cover here tonight. One is that a little over a year ago we started discussion with Nat from the New Hampshire Dairy Council, which has all dairy farmers in the state of New Hampshire, along with other participants, looking to promote milk and specifically low-fat chocolate milk as the drink of choice through NIJA. There have been some still commercials done on a number of the TVs and so forth, but Portsmouth is proud to be able to have the first live-action commercial. Back about a year ago, we talked about doing it as a winter sport and trying to get it in, and don't kill me in that. I left one thing behind. We did get some filming done. We had an incident that put that off until next year, which it will be shown next year during the winter time. The New Hampshire Dairy Council had come up with the funding for this and the television, along with NIJA, to, again, it's the only endorsed drink. One may think, well, why is it milk? Because of the nutrition and the value that it puts back into the body. So, Nat did an outstanding job in the first filming to get ready for next year, and that one's been put on ice for the time being. Then, they needed something by April 7th, which I attend the New Hampshire Dairy Association and New Hampshire Dairy Council meeting last week. Let me tell you, it got a standing ovation. We're about to show you this in about 2 seconds, but it was an outstanding presentation with Amy Hall, who is the director of the New Hampshire Dairy Promotion. Let me also say that this is not the first time the Portsmouth students have done this. There are 2 other commercials out there, one dealing with a motorcycle event, and I'll let you talk about that in a second. The other dealing with the Hodges Brook Foundation, which is here in Portsmouth. It's a revitalization donation to put in. Unfortunately, we could only get one on the computer tonight, and that one is the New Hampshire Dairy Council. Along with, there was an outstanding one that Nat took time that a student did. And this is a program, and quite bluntly, we have hanging off to the side right now whether or not budget will allow this program to continue. You have it as one of your possible cuts to come. I'm not here to plead for that, neither is Nat, and Nat probably doesn't want me to talk about it, but when you see this quality, in fact, we are allowed to be shown on 5, what do they call them, 5 national?
Well, top 5 markets.
Top 5 markets nationwide. You can't do that commercially, let alone. And these are students doing it. I have to say the students did an outstanding job. Here's one student that received, I guess it was in the last week or so, a full scholarship to Emerson for his work that he has performed through the Portsmouth school system. And an interesting one, this one by Vincent Tarantino, which I hope that we can at some time take a view of it very shortly. And I would love the City Council to see this. It ties TV media along with that of the arts. It is probably one of the best little short films in 4 minutes that you could ever watch. Probably award-winning. I'm going to let Nat talk just a minute while I get the system ready and see if I'm not technical.
Well, the past 3 years we've been producing motorcycle expo commercials that have been shown in Boston, Connecticut, and when they show in Connecticut, they fall into the New York market, which makes it part of the top 5 markets in the United States. I've been in the business for years, and I know of people who have tried to get their commercials in top 5 markets. So for a high school to be able to do that, it's pretty amazing. The students produce them. I don't. Students come up with the storyboards. They talk to the clients. They have time constraints that they have to fulfill. They are dealing with the client one-on-one. And if it was a Macintosh, I'd jump over and try to help, but it's not. But it is the students who put these together.
That's not it. Keep going in.
Oh, thanks. We also have, after 3 years, been able to produce a weekly news show that runs inside the school. The students, again, they produce it 100%. I'm the executive producer of it, but they are the ones who go out and they videotape. They follow up with the news local. They had a piece on the fire that was down in Hampton during the storm, to the unveiling of the fireman's statue right downtown, to the sporting events that are happening, the weather. And it's actually gotten, I believe, quite a following in the school. We get feedback from the students. The students actually write us little comments, what they like and dislike. My students have actually come to accept criticism. Not bad. They look at it and they kind of go, okay, what can we change? What do we want to change? And it's turned into a pretty nice show. Are you ready?
I'm ready, because once I get it, it'll go.
Thank you.
Chocolate milk, the ultimate sports recovery drink, is now the official beverage of New Hampshire High School athletics. Milk is a nutrient-packed fitness drink that contains a unique mix of nutrients that help muscles refuel, getting athletes back in the game.
Fuel up, stretch out. Hey, you're late.
Sorry, Coach.
Take this, fuel up, stretch out with the rest of the team. Okay, bring it in. Bring off in the groups, let's go. Stop. Your form is terrible. What's wrong?
I don't know. I'm missing something, Coach.
Here, try this. Now that's good form.
EHS track. We drink our milk on the run.
This message brought to you by Granite State Dairy Promotion and your local New Hampshire dairy farmers.
All right.
Now, this, again, cultivated the use of using good English. It cultivated that a storyline had to be done and approved first. Matter of fact, I believe there are 2 storylines approved for this. And then the actual filming, and then choosing teams and working with the teams. Andrew is the student, right? Andrew Stocker just did an outstanding, and he's a student that, you know, kind of sits in the background. You wouldn't recognize Andrew as, you know, being, you know, just this outstanding, brilliant young man who really has an eye for technology. And to be awarded a full scholarship to Emerson is just an outstanding tribute to the work that we do, and especially Nat's class and so forth. But enough said on this. I want to thank Nat. And again, it took over a year to get this. And it now, one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we showed you tonight is that this is now on TV, and you will see it on your cable networks, both on ESPN, the Food Network, Nick. I think there's like 13 or 14 possible spots that it will be seen on, and we wanted the board to be known that, again, what's happening out there. And hopefully someday we can see the other tapes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot, Nat. So moving forward, we'll turn it over to the superintendent for the report.
Yes, in your packet you should find a number of items of information, April's lunch menu, a copy of the superintendent's update where we tried to capture some key aspects in regards to the school board's retreat on March 23rd, particularly in relation to school improvement efforts. You have a memo from Pat Remick where she explains why the city is actually losing the transition grant dollars, and next year the $222,000 we had in prior years, and how in FY12 support from the state is contingent on really how the legislature goes about determining the free and reduced meal factor. But that's a bit down the road in terms of knowing where we stand with that. Also, you'll find information about a field trip. The Dondero 5th graders will be attending the Ferry Beach Ecology School in Saco, Maine next week. You have notice of 3 resignations. Elizabeth Humphreys, who has been away on 2 years leave of absence, will not return to the PEEP program. Gwen Baker, who has spent 13 years as the choir director here in the Portsmouth School District, will not return. And then David Cook will actually retire. He's been a custodian at Dondero in July of 2010. You also have noticed that Molly French is going to go out on short-term leave effective June 1st for the remainder of the school year. You have a couple of newsletter items, the New Franklin Gazette and the Donderific newsletter. If you take the time to read the New Franklin Gazette, you'll see Principal Shea actually demystifies what happens at teacher workshop days, as well as a host of other exciting grade level and school-wide happenings there. And if you read the Donderific newsletter, you can learn about the school's responsive classroom components and those elements there. I did want to share with you New Hampshire School Board's legislative bulletin and provide you basically a brief summary of what's going on educationally in the legislature currently, and draw to your attention kind of the revisions on pupil safety and violence prevention. There's been a lot of talk lately about the bullying initiative and the changes that are afoot in the legislature. And I also want to remind folks at home that on May 13th, the coalition with Stacey Kramer and others will actually be presenting a program at Portsmouth High School. I think it begins at 5 o'clock. And there'll be a conversation about cyberbullying. Jackie Valley from Community Diversions will actually do that presentation, so members of the public are invited to that. I did share with you questions that the City Council had given to us in advance of the April 21st workshop. I also this evening provided you copies of our responses to that, and I would let you know that that's a rough draft. Hasn't been edited for fluency or even typos, but I wanted you to have that in advance of the meeting. We're due to turn that in on Friday, April 16th, I guess it is. And so if folks have any suggestions or further input or something they'd like to see added, we'd be happy to do that. What else do we have? Oh, on the back side of the agenda, you've been provided 3 letters to the editor regarding the proposed school budget, one from our own chairman here, as well as a draft of a finance committee charter. I thank Dexter Legg for his help in pulling that together, and I'm sure the board will want to have a conversation about that as a possible subcommittee at a future date. And then Steve Zadrovic was going to share, as I guess has traditionally been done, the 2010 retirements of our teachers here in district. And so, absent any questions, I know that was all crystal clear.
Just a generalization back in the questions from, actually the one from Mayor Farini. The question indicates, please indicate how many non-direct educational personnel are in the school department, and where would you recommend reductions and so. I don't know, I mean, when a question's asked, sometimes you have to ask a question back. I know that you and I had talked about this. What is that? Is that, are we looking at administration? Are we looking at those of the guidance, nursing, and you know, we have supervisors, you know, whether it be a Ken Lynchy, in the director of so many other things that may not have direct student contact, but again, I think that's almost a very broad. I'm not sure whether he was specifying a group, maybe administrators, as you and I discussed, or was it that's those that are under the teacher's contract? I think a clarification sometimes needs to come back just so we're answering the question correctly.
Absolutely, and he did encourage a phone call if there were any concerns. We tried to answer it in 2 ways. One is to look at maintenance, custodians, you know, tech support, et cetera, and then we also talked about those folks who are not directly in classrooms on a regular basis, as you suggested, nurses, et cetera. So we did answer it twice, but you know, I'm happy to give him a call and get some clarification on that before we submit an answer.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Okay.
So we have 6 retirements that we'd like to bring to your attention this evening, all of which are retiring at the end of this school year. The first is Jim Johnston, English teacher at Portsmouth High School. Jim will be completing 27 years with the Portsmouth School Department. He worked as a reading Title I teacher at Portsmouth Middle School for 3 years, as a reading specialist at Dondero Elementary School for 9 years, and as a reading specialist English teacher at Portsmouth High School for the last 15 years. We have Sally Martin, a resource room teacher at Portsmouth Middle School. Sally will be completing 23 years with the Portsmouth School Department. She worked with students as a resource room teacher at Dondero Elementary School for 4 years and Portsmouth Middle School for 19 years. Sharon Musselman, a first grade teacher at Little Harbor Elementary School. Sharon will be completing 16 years with the Portsmouth School Department. She worked as a resource room teacher at New Franklin School for her first year and the last 15 years as a first grade teacher at Little Harbor School. I have Helene Rafferty, second grade teacher at Dondero Elementary School. Helene will be completing 30 years with the Portsmouth School Department. She worked as a special education teacher at PEEP when it was housed at the Portsmouth Middle School and at Jones Elementary School. Then she taught kindergarten and readiness first at Brackett Elementary School, and then 1 year teaching readiness first at New Franklin. For the last 20 years, Helene has been at Dondero Elementary School. Then she was in special education for 3 years and a grade 2 teacher for 17 years. Sandra Raheli Coviello, speech language pathologist at New Franklin Elementary School. Sandra will be completing 27 years with the Portsmouth School Department. She began as a speech language pathologist at Portsmouth High School, Portsmouth Middle School, Dondero Elementary School, and PEEP. She has been a speech language pathologist at New Franklin Elementary School for the past 20 years. And Deborah Alberts. Deb will be completing a total of 10 years with the Portsmouth School Department. She worked as a 7th grade English teacher at the Portsmouth Middle School for the past 6 years. She was also employed with the Portsmouth School Department as a 7th grade English teacher for 4 years from 1986 to 1990, leaving due to a reduction in force when Pease Air Force Base closed. So those are the retirements we'd like to bring to you. Their years added together total 133.
Wow. Very impressive. A long career in education. It's a very noble profession.
And I would, I guess it's been your custom to have a reception for the retiring
Correct.
teachers, and that's
Correct.
scheduled actually for May 25th, which is the second meeting of the month in May, that will take place at Portsmouth Middle School.
Okay. Ken.
Just a quick note in regards to that, we're going to soon see teachers. There are two, Helen Rafferty has mentioned that she taught both at the Jones School and the Brackett School, and it's going to be not too long before we have teachers that did not teach at any of our now closed elementary schools. I mean, I don't think I've heard anybody from the Sherburne School in a number of years. Lafayette, I think Tom Bokel was probably the last one. And these were live, vital schools, a very short time in the history of Portsmouth. So, it's heartfelt to see when you see those schools that, as somebody that grew up in the area, remembers. And those are the base brat schools, so, I didn't get over there too often. But the lady I married, I think, attended both of them.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, district reports.
Yeah.
Nancy Roy from the Robert J. Lister Academy.
Good evening, Nancy. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here. I always enjoy the opportunity to talk about my students and the learning that's taking place at Lister Academy. So I'm going to start. I just added a highlight. I am bound and determined, after hearing those young people speak, that Lister Academy is going to go abroad. You can count on it. We will be sending your proposal soon. Just what a wonderful learning opportunity. How can I not put that down on my list of things that I must do? So beware, it's coming. But seriously, the highlight that I'd like to just talk about before I get into our SMART goals is that we were honored to receive the President's Community Partner Award from Great Bay Community College. This award and others are sponsored by the Campus Compact for New Hampshire, which is a consortium of New Hampshire colleges and universities. So today, Brian Massio, who is the teacher of our college transition program and a student in the college transition program, and myself, were treated to a wonderful celebratory luncheon at the Crown Plaza in Nashua. And I will pass around to you our little award and posters, which can be downloaded, which we'll have plastered all over. So that was really a wonderful affirmation of the work that we're trying to accomplish there, and we're really proud to be a partner with Great Bay Community College, and I really enjoyed doing some networking today because we've really got some nice ideas for, though I was told I have too many, for expanding the program and really looking at having some of our students be able to go half-time at our school and half-time at Great Bay Community College. So we're really excited and thrilled with their flexibility and creativity. It's been really nice. So you probably all have committed to memory my SMART goal. of this year, which was to reduce, to have 100% of our students reduce the number of developmental courses required for them, as indicated by their scores on the Accuplacer test. So I don't know if you folks remember, but at the end of semester 1, the last time I was here was in December, and we had not done our first, we hadn't done our post-test of the first session of intensive work with a particular program to try to boost our Accuplacer scores. And please remember, when I'm talking about the data, that we're talking about freshmen through seniors. So we have expectations for all of our students, regardless of their class, to be making progress by reduction in developmental courses. So at the end of semester 1, when we did our post-test after our piloting of a particular program, we had 42% of our students had reduced the number of developmental courses that they would require at Great Bay Community College by 1 course. Yay. We're really proud of that, honestly, when you're talking about freshmen through seniors. So what we had found is that the program that we were piloting is called Advancer Learner, and they had stated that by doing this tutorial, if you will, that's aligned to the Accuplacer, which is a college placement test, that students could boost their scores by up to about 20 points. Well, I am happy to report that we found a significant bump in our students' Accuplacer scores. In fact, 68% of our students had a bump of 20 to 39 points, which is huge, really huge. The bad news, and there is some, is that even though we had gains in points from 20 to really 48 points on the post-Accuplacer test, even with that amount of point movement, 26% of our students were unable to make the cut score for the next developmental class. So that indicates to you the level, the beginning level skill. So for instance, we had some students, the first cutoff to go from 3 developmental courses to 2 developmental courses is a score of 57 on a particular, say, arithmetic test. If we had a student who gained 35 points, but they started out with a score of 19, they still, even though they had that huge amount of growth, they still didn't make the cut. So it's been challenging to start where we need to start with some of our students, but we saw huge amounts of growth. 32% of our students, unfortunately, made minimal progress. And what I mean by that is that their Accuplacer scores on both the reading and the math were very, very, very low. And even though we did an intensive individual tutorial coupled with their regular direct instruction in their classes, there was minimal movement. So I thought that you might be interested in, out of those 32% of students, how many of those students attended Portsmouth schools? Because believe me, I was looking for ways and reasons to justify this lack of movement. But out of that 32% that really made minimal progress, 21% were students that have been in the Portsmouth School District since elementary school. So I think it speaks to the challenge of all of us that we have students with a range of learning, well, I guess learning points. And we have to take our students where we get them, and we are moving them along. So what we're doing to really address both those students that who responded well to the Advancer and those students who did not, is we're taking those students who made huge amounts of growth but might be 5-7 points away from that next cut score, and really doing personalized education plans with those students based on the data that we got from the Accuplacer scores. The students that need the most intensive learning environment in order to move their learning forward are those students that had both low scores in reading and math. And we are pulling out the stops. Unfortunately, when you do intensive skill-based stuff, you have to balance that with engagement in keeping kids engaged in learning. And that's not easy to do when you're talking about a 17-year-old student who really is still at a place where we're doing basic skill development. So we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. We are determined, because we won't be happy until we have 100%. 82% is not going to be satisfactory. Some of the things that would be helpful is, even though we're a very small setting, it is very clear that in terms of reading development, what we did find, which was interesting, is that the Advancer Learning program was really very closely aligned to the AccuPlacer test. What happened with our students who didn't score well in reading is the vocabulary. Vocabulary and basic grammar were just, it was overwhelmingly challenging to prepare kids for that. So we're really looking at how can we look at our English program and how can we ask Joanne Simons to really provide us with some resources in terms of reading specialists for that population of our students. So that said, our focus and where we move forward into our post-test at the end of the year, hopefully we'll have some other numbers to share with you when we report out in June. We're optimistic, though it is ever challenging in a small setting such as ours to be everything that we need to be for such a wide range of student interest. And do our internship program, and do our college transition program, and do projects like the sustainability project that we're doing with the city of Portsmouth. So we're really at a place where we're really looking at how can we be responsible to our students in terms of providing them those academic skills that they need to have to be functioning, working members of our society, and yet still do all of those wonderful things that we like doing, and how can we manage our resources to be able to do all of that. And I'm not sure whether we can. I think we might have some difficult choices ahead. And I don't know how that will play out. So that's, I guess, what I love about my job, is seeing how that will work out. So any questions in regard to that? Yeah.
I do have one quick question. Could you just briefly explain what the AccuPlacer test measures?
Yep. The AccuPlacer test is one of the, well, most of the community colleges uses it. It basically assesses skills in reading, writing, and math. And depending upon the score that you get, depends upon whether you need basically prep classes before you take college English or college math. So if I was going to go apply to Great Bay Community College, I have to take the AccuPlacer test as part of my admission, and I get scores, and based upon those scores, I get placed in classes that are appropriate for me. And they cost money and don't go towards your degree.
Right. So are you giving the AccuPlacer test to just seniors or freshmen, sophomores?
Everybody.
Juniors, seniors?
Yep. We bought our own license. We do it in-house.
Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Paula Wensley, Special Ed Director.
Good evening.
Hi.
Nancy does some great things with the students at the Lister Academy. I've been fortunate to be out there quite a few times on good things and other things these past couple of months. But she does a remarkable job with the kids. I've been asked to keep my presentation to PLCs, what the special ed teams are doing. I'm trying to keep it brief, and I've given just a brief synopsis. However, in special ed, nothing is really that short and sweet. I looked at the different schools and the different teams and what's going on. At the elementary team, most of the special education staff are integrated in with the PLC team, so there's really no special ed PLC groups. They work with the regular educators, usually on grade level, teams focusing on individual SMART goals. Speech people are usually involved more in the reading and the writing process, anything language-based. OTs will work on the writing process also. So they're pretty much fully integrated. At the middle school level, the middle school team has been examining student learning all year. They're looking at math, reading, and writing. In math, they're considering ways to increase students' learning by providing more practice on basic skills. They're using things like precision teaching to teach to automaticity with students. They're looking at creating monitoring probes to assess how students are doing every 4 to 6 weeks, so that you're not letting a long length of time go by before you're realizing that the intervention isn't working. So they're working on those quick probes and assessments. They're also teaching the language of math, because one thing that was discovered was sometimes students don't understand the question that you're asking, especially when you look at some word problems. Also, with responses, they're also not able to explain the process they're using to derive the answers. So language, we've discovered, is really a big part of math. In writing, they're considering writing across the curriculum, and that includes basic skill expectations for grammar, punctuation, editing, using spontaneous writing assignments, using prompts, and then creating rubrics to assess the students' learning and their students' writing. In reading, they've had a reading task force going on most of the year to look at what reading interventions we're using with students, what is successful, what isn't. We've also been contacting other school districts in whose reading scores have really been showing their students are reading on grade level overall. NECAP scores are good, and they're showing their students are pretty proficient or proficient with distinction. So they've been reaching out to other schools to see what interventions they're using, what curriculum they're using, what appears to be working, and seeing what we can bring back to the district. They're also looking at developing an implementation of looping the case managers for grades 7 and 8. So the 7th grade case manager will follow the child into 8th grade, and the 8th goes down to 7th, so it's a continuous looping process. That's at the middle school. The high school continues to work on its goal of improving math student scores by progress monitoring the students who scored low on the NECAP and providing interventions through the ARA-funded math interventionists as well as through their math study centers. School counselors. School counselors have examined interventions for students with behavioral and social emotional needs to determine if what we're doing is working, what isn't, what do we need to expand on. At one point we were looking at even, do we need a kids junior program at the elementary school? But once we looked at the students and we looked at the data, we realized that that intensive a program was not really needed at the elementary level. What we're doing with our outreach counselors seems to be pretty effective. Now we're looking at interventions. We're looking at areas to address bullying and cyberbullying. We've talked about that at our last couple of meetings. This next meeting, we're hoping to bring back, look at our data, analyze our data to see what's going on there. Bullying and cyberbullying has been an issue through the state, and that was the focus of the DOE, especially the special ed department, back in the fall. Our breakout address was really on cyberbullying and bullying. And we did talk about it, but our focus is back there as it's becoming more prominent. And also looking at the House bills that are before the state that they're looking at too. So that's pretty much it with our PLC groups. We continue to do more in our meeting with our special ed coordinators, meeting with our special ed staff. We had a large workshop today presented by Bonnie Dunham from Parent Information Center to go over special ed rules and regulations in the laws. And that was pretty well received. It was very interesting, even though we work very closely with Kathleen Dwyer. It was very interesting to hear somebody from the Parents Advisory Group and their perceptions on special ed. What was good is to see we pretty much mesh and agree with any rules and regulations. So,
Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
At the high school, you were talking about the math. Is that with just the 11th graders who take the kneecap, or is that with the students as they come up?
It is definitely with the 11th graders because we are looking at them in their graduation requirements, but it's also with other math students that are struggling. Algebra is a very difficult subject for a lot of our students with learning disabilities. Anything language-based disability would make algebra difficult, so it's not just for the 11th graders.
Thank you.
I have one quick question. So at the elementary level, you say that things seem to be pretty well integrated. The special ed people are integrated well with the PLCs that exist.
With the PLCs.
So how does it work at the middle and high school, especially the high school? I'm just curious.
The special ed departments at both the middle and the high schools have really worked as a group themselves and developed their own PLC goals.
Okay.
They certainly are part, and I'm sure Mr. Stokel can speak to more with the middle school teams. They are part of other PLC teams as they meet.
They talk to other people.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, when you look at the subject areas that they are very much involved in, it would be appropriate.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Stokel, Portsmouth Middle School.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I do know that you did receive a copy of this report in your board packet. Also, in front of you, you should find that I dropped off this evening was another example of constructive response questions which the folks in the science department have developed.
What's that?
And I'll kind of talk about that after I briefly go through the report. First of all, under highlights, I think that most of you or all of you would have seen in the local newspaper that Portsmouth Middle School did score in the top 10 in the Johns Hopkins Talent Search. We've been participating in the Johns Hopkins Talent Search for, possibly the past 20 or 25 years. And I don't know if this is something that they've just started to rank because it's not something we have heard of in the past. We were actually kind of received the information out of the blue, but we are quite proud of our students' accomplishment there. Also, as I mentioned, one of our 8th graders, Kelsey Frizzell, was at Plymouth State University on Friday, competing in the state competition for the GOB. The way that they rank that competition is they have a ranking of students who are in the top 100 in the state, and then a ranking of the students who are in the top 10. And then you have your student who wins that competition and then goes on to the national competition. And Kelsey did end up in the top 100 in the state of New Hampshire. She may have been 11th. They don't give you an actual ranking. It's just the top 10 and the top 100. So congratulations to Kelsey on that competition. The next piece is an update on the PLC. And since we spoke in December, people are continuing their work on their SMART goals, developing their formative assessments, collecting their data. But another thing that we've done in the entire school system was during the months of February and March, all faculty, all PLCs worked on a writing prompt which was given to all students in February and March, and then during the March teacher workshop day, the faculty had developed a rubric and they scored those writing assessments and collected their data from those writing assessments. Now, those were writing assessments in all subject areas. So students would have actually had a writing prompt in their physical education classes. As a matter of fact, in our physical education classes, the writing prompt had to do with the Northeast Passage, which the students had previously participated in. They would have done writing prompts in their tech ed classes, their family and consumer science classes, their math classes, their English classes. So students would have actually been involved in many different writing prompts. What I've done is I've given you a couple examples. On the second page, you'll see the formative assessment that the 7th grade math PLC used. And what they actually did was they went to the kneecap assessment and they picked one of the 8th grade constructed response questions for their 7th graders. At the time, they were working on surface area. They gave a pretest, and you'll see the results on that pretest on page 3. It's under formative assessment 1. And then they gave this second formative assessment, which was the actual question, the released item from the kneecaps. And you'll see the formative assessment 2. And then they collected all of that data and they broke that out to really give them good information on the student growth on that particular formative assessment. And you'll see what their results were and then what they did for the next steps. From a couple of students who did not fare well and to the students who actually had mastered a lot of that information beforehand. And that's part of our PLC work is what do you do when they have learned? And that's why it's important that we use these formative assessments so we're not teaching materials and 25% of the class has already mastered that. Where do we take those students next? And the last page, you'll see the scoring guide that they used to score that particular rubric, that they used to score that guide. The next piece is the science, and the reason that I brought that is because something which our science department has developed, I think we all remember the blue books. Well, what we've done is every 7th and 8th grader has a blue book in their science classes. This will be developed also in the 6th grade. The idea of this blue book is inside they have the actual scoring rubric. Now, the students will have this book for 3 years. So in the 6th grade, there will be 3 formative assessments in science which will be entered into this blue book. These books will then go to their 7th grade science teachers. They will work on 3 formative assessments, constructive response questions in 7th grade. Then they'll go forward to their 8th grade science teachers. They will work on 3 different constructive response questions in 8th grade. The beauty of this is the teacher at any given time will be able to see the student's growth. The student will be able to see their growth with these constructive response questions. And then this book will go forward to Portsmouth High School to the science teachers so they will have this ahead of time and they can look at the growth from these students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, where they're at and where they want to move forward. So it's bringing consistency into how we actually work on these constructive response questions, what folks are looking for, because there are different prompts in here. Are you actually answering the question that is being asked? How are you answering that question, and so on. So I wanted to give you a copy of the work that the science department is also doing. And this is not just happening in science and in writing, it's happening in all the different departments. And the last piece is basically a highlight on what's coming up next. The Spring Showcase is April 22nd. That's next week from this Thursday. And that starts at 6 p.m. You are all more than welcome to stop by. You have a chance to see all of the interdisciplinary units that the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders have been working on, and that'll be laid out through the entire middle school building. Next is the middle school concert on June 2nd, and I have set the middle school celebration graduation for June 17th. That's a bit of a change from the past. In the past, we would always have our celebration graduation the night before high school graduation because we used the same exact setup at Portsmouth High School because it gives us plenty of parking, it gives plenty of seating for parents. Mm-hmm. If we were to have it the night before high school graduation this year, our 8th graders would still have 7 days of school left. And I think our 8th graders look at their celebration graduation kind of like the end. So it's probably not a good idea to have 7 days of school left after that. So we've decided instead to have it June 17th, and that has been advertised to the parents and now to the board. and if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Mr. Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your board packets, you had the month-end report for March, and at your places this evening, you had a handout which is the financial report narrative. I'll just hit the highlights for you. As you look at it, I think the salary and benefits are tracking, as I've been mentioning all along. There are some minor variations, but they're basically the result of timing versus the plan. There are two large variations that are noted in the salary section, and that would be the under the teachers and the custodial salary lines. However, most of that is the result of maternity leaves or injuries and short leaves of absence for health reasons. So the extra pressure has been put on the sublines, which you'll see why that's going in the other direction. However, they do offset each other in the long run. As far as the benefit sections go, I've been indicating all year long that there are a couple of shortfalls that I've been working towards covering. One of them is the dental insurance, which, again, I took responsible for being too optimistic on that budget. And the $90,000 was the estimated extra teachers' retirement due to the last-minute change by the retirement system to increase the rates for teachers. In the operating budget, most of the variances are due to changes in the historic purchasing patterns as well as the implementation of the soft freeze to make sure that we were going to make it through the year. Two major shortfalls I want to note is one is that in the out-of-district tuition and transition section, cost center 165, at the beginning of the year I noted that we would have an overage that we were trying to take care of, and due to the fluctuations of the student needs in that particular group, it's predicted right now to be about a $100,000 shortfall. However, that number changes, on a weekly and a daily basis because the needs of the kids change and students move and students leave, and it's just it's a hard one to pin down, quite frankly. On the positive side, the energy budget is tracking with very good savings as we predicted, and that's due to the mild winter and the early spring. And so the majority of that savings right now is a result of that weather effect on the natural gas usage, as well as the fact that we were able to get some favorable pricing working with our consultant this year. Transportation expenditures there's a savings there, and that is a result of the fact that we were able to negotiate better contracts with student transportation companies after the budget had been put to bed. And we had increased the transfer from the parking fees to support the transportation line. I'd like to qualify all these results by saying that they're based on trending after 3/4 of a year. April, May, and June can be pretty volatile months depending upon whichever expense line you're looking at. So I'm cautiously optimistic right now that we will end the year on a good note based on some of these extra savings, and it just reminds you of the fact that if we'd had a harsher winter, that wouldn't be here. I actually put on the back for you a very preliminary, so stamped and noted draft of my projection at the end. Mine's in red, actually. Didn't want to spend the money in the color copies for you, but in any case, so it gives you, based on the trending, my feeling right now of the potential savings if that trending holds versus the potential cost overruns. And as you can see, we're on the right side of that for a change, and I'm hoping that that's going to maintain itself. But that's pretty much it for the general fund. And in Cost Center 207, those expenses they fluctuate the same way as special ed expenses in the general fund because, again, that population is mobile and needs change on a daily basis. We did have some revenue shortfalls, but we did from the state, the CAT aid, they reduced that, but we were able to pick up a little extra tuition from some students out of district that were placed with us. That and the fact that we did have a fund balance in that particular fund last year moving forward, I think we will, I know we're going to come out this year okay. It'll just reduce what we have available to apply for next year. So we're tracking that as well.
Great.
Good news.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Okay, old business. So this is this a second reading?
Yes.
For this policy? Entertain a motion to accept this policy?
So moved. Second.
And seconded. Okay, discussion. Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Okay.
Carol Chelman?
Yes.
Kent LePage?
Yes.
Dexter Legg?
Yes.
Rebecca Remison?
Yes.
Ann Walker?
Yes.
Mitch Schulman?
Yes.
Tom Martin?
Yes.
Leslie Stevens?
Yes.
Lisa Sweet?
Yes.
So just in case people are wondering what we just voted on, this was a new policy that talks about the evaluation of professional staff. We knew what we were voting on.
Oh, that's right, this is televised.
Right. Okay, so moving on to some of the new business. Before we accept any motions on moving this forward, I would just like to say that at our agenda meeting, the conversation came up, and it really seemed to make sense from the perspective of the chair and the vice chair that we could separate this out into three separate issues. One would be that we would look at the meeting dates for the board. The other would be that we vote on whether or not we want to have all of our meetings televised and or recorded and televised and streamed at a later date. And the other question would be location. So first up is consideration and approval of the school board meeting dates, which are in your packet. Ann, yes.
I move that we approve the list of proposed meeting dates and locations, which are listed as the second and fourth Tuesday, which is currently the practice of the board. The dates in July and August to be determined, one each month, by administration.
Could I just suggest you mentioned proposed meeting dates and locations? This is just meeting dates.
This is just meeting dates.
Yes. So that was the motion.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
I have a discussion. I was looking at how the city council does theirs, and they have rules that they adopt at the beginning of each new elected cycle, and it says the regular meetings, and I was thinking we could change it for us, of the school board shall be held on the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month at some time between 7 o'clock in the evening, set forth by the board. And that way we have a clear policy that it is the second and fourth Tuesday. Because unless I sit down and take these dates and then align it to a calendar.
Right.
So I think if somehow we get in there that we say the second and fourth Tuesday.
So that would that would be a question to send back.
Yeah, just to make sure that it's in there.
Oh, so you said that in the motion.
I did.
Okay.
Those are the second and fourth Tuesdays.
That way we have that in our heads instead of
and
remembering
that's the
dates.
tradition of the board, I believe. Yeah.
It is.
Tom.
I would also just bring up the fact that the dates that are on the calendar, we don't necessarily know. The next motion is to discuss whether we're going to be able to televise. So part and parcel is making sure we're not putting the cart before the horse. So we approve X number of dates, for the calendar. The question is does that impede, our ability to televise? So I would tend to, put forth a motion to say that we table that, that vote until we actually get through the televised portion, because if we suddenly say these are the dates that we're going to be on the calendar, we find out that we decide that we want to be televised and now we don't have the facilities accessible. I would just say that we table the vote until we open up the discussion on the televised portion.
I don't have a problem with that, but I would suggest that I know that the superintendent has had a conversation with Mr. Bohenko, and it seems as if the board voted to have all of its meetings here, for example, and televised, that they would accommodate. Is that incorrect? Or is that correct?
No, I think that's accurate.
Okay.
Okay. No, I'm not privy to all the conversations, but I appreciate that.
Not to put a too fine point on it, but I think he said he would do his best to accommodate us.
Oh.
Not that he would accommodate us. So.
Okay. So we.
So I just, that is.
Expect his best.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Okay. Well, that was the impression I had, that it would, if the board voted, then it would happen. Any other comments, discussion?
I have a motion that I would like to make.
Wait. Okay, so we're still in the middle of a motion right now.
I'm sorry. That's right.
Right, we have a motion on the table to
Yes.
accept the dates. Right. So no further discussion, so I would suggest we take a vote. Call the question. So all in favor of having these as the dates of the school board meeting, which is the second and fourth Tuesday of the month, except for those two in July and August, which would be determined by the administration, is what works best for them. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next on the list is the consideration and approval of having all school board meetings televised. Carol.
I have a motion that I think is important to make at this point before we get into a motion or discussion on televising. In my conversations with various board members, I've called almost everybody on the board. It seems the only argument against televising live on Channel 22 from the City Hall is the fact that we need to be in the schools in some capacity. And so this motion that I'm going to make would deal with that question. It would get us into the schools in a meaningful way. That would be actually an improvement on what we're currently doing. It would open up the lines of communication with the community and parents. It would help us engage the community more than we're currently doing. So the motion I would make is I move that the school board tour each school with a discussion period with the principal once per year at a time selected to be convenient to that school's community, such as an open house, PTA meeting, or other event. Did you get that?
I'm not taking notes, but I understand. So the idea is, this is not a motion about meetings. This is a motion to have a tour of the buildings.
Right. Tour with a discussion. And it would be tied with the important thing. A couple of board members who I've spoken to gave me the suggestion of tying the event to some other event like a PTA meeting or an open house or even some other event where you're already drawing a whole lot of parents to the school building anyway. They're already coming out. And now they would have this that they could do just before the open house or whatever other event it happens to be tied to. But the key component is that it's tied to an event, that there is a discussion period with the principal, and that there is a tour, and that happens at each school once during the year, because board members told me they felt it was very important that we made it to every school during the year. And so I think it incorporates those concerns as well as desire to have more people attend. So, and I think it's important because, as I said, the only argument against televising live on Channel 22 is the issue of wanting to be in the schools. So if we deal with this issue, then it makes the other issue simple.
It sounds a little bit off target for me, but I understand what you're saying. You're asking school board members to commit to taking a tour of each school during the year.
Well, I don't think the school board will tour each school. with a discussion period with the principal once per year. If a board member decides they don't want to do that, they don't have to do it, but the board will do it.
Okay. So there's a motion. Okay, not hearing is.
Second.
Not hearing. Okay, second, further discussion.
So I guess a point of order, the assumption is, I think, that this would constitute a quorum, which would mean that it's a meeting.
Could be a problem. Right.
Well, no, it's a meeting.
Right,
In other
yes.
words, if there's a quorum of this group that's together, then it's a meeting. So I just want to clarify that what the proposal is.
So you're
based
asking-
on that is we're asking for
Correct.
six
More
additional
meetings.
school board meetings a
Right.
year to be held.
Correct.
In each school in conjunction with
Yes.
with another event in that school.
6 additional meetings. Yeah, okay.
Yes. Just to be
Well,
clear.
that's very clear. Yes, Rebecca.
I think when we had, like a great example of what I envision this to be is last year at the retirement gathering at Little Harbor that was held down in the amphitheater. Beforehand, there was a demonstration of a whiteboard in the classroom, and that was really great. And so that, to me, that is a really good use of our time being in the schools. We got to, go upstairs, see the classroom, see a demonstration, and then we actually were able to, talk with. So that wouldn't be an additional meeting. That is one that is already existing.
That was one prior to a school board meeting in the building, I believe, right?
It was a special meeting. It wasn't a regular.
It was a school board
It was
meeting.
a special
board
meeting.
meeting.
School board meeting.
School board
Believe.
meeting. Well, they were listed as special meetings, so they weren't listed as
prior
part
to
of
the
the
meeting.
school board meeting.
This is prior to the
But
meeting.
so that is the kind of thing where we actually had time and we were able to engage and discuss,
Right.
and have time to talk with the staff. So,
Right.
I mean, I think that, being in the schools is really important, and we all agree on that. And if we can have, time where we actually do see parents and students and get an idea of the community that's going on, I think this could be a really wonderful opportunity.
Yeah. Linda, Lisa, Kent.
So here's my concern. I think in the motion, I heard you say you wanted to tie it to open house. I don't know whether that's an example or whether that's hard and fast. For 32 years, I haven't seen open house being an opportunity for school board members to come talk to the principal. That's not the purpose of open house. The purpose of open house is for us to talk to the parents of the kids that we have in our class, to talk about our curriculum. So I think that would, for me, well, it doesn't matter what I think, but for the newer teachers, they're in a state of panic when it's open house night. So I think if the school board people, who they see as this sort of like overarching, I'm not sure what, they would be in a state. I don't think that open house is the forum for you to come around and talk to teachers if they're getting ready to, for the first time, perhaps meet the parents of the kids that they're going to have in the class. I think that's a bad decision to tie it together. I think that you need to think about maybe the whiteboard demonstration. That was a fine plan before the retirement tea. But I think you have to really think this through, what you're going to tie to come and talk to the principals or come in to talk to the staff. Because if there's an event going on, it's for a purpose. An open house, I would so not be happy if that's what you did.
Right.
Because we are out straight for open house, trying to get stuff ready and get what we need to do. We don't want to, not that we don't want to talk to you, but we don't want to talk to you that night, okay? So that's all my 2 cents worth.
Don't mince words, Lisa.
I'm trying not to.
Lisa.
And I don't want the public to get the impression that we don't do that now. The past practice has been that when we do go and meet at each school during the year, we often, but not always, do arrange to have a tour or to see some aspect of, what makes that building special or what's happening at that building. So the school board has had that opportunity in the past, and we try to coordinate it with the meetings where we're already going to be there rather than adding in another 6 meetings for the board members.
Kent.
2 retreats, that's what I think I had. 2 retreats.
Kent.
Just to follow in regards to that, what Dexter and what being said, being a board member, I've always made it a priority to get to the school sometime during the year. It actually used to be easier when I was not self-employed. I thought it'd be the other way around, by the way. But FedEx was very generous to me, even though they may not know that. So touring and taking time and sitting in a classroom, you know, getting permission and letting it be known that you're coming, not necessarily knowing about the class, I think is a duty that if a board member can take that time and do it with all 6 schools, I highly encourage it. And following up with what, you know, Dexter has said, and now we've been sort of looking at numbers, it comes to about 28 or 29 meetings a year when you add this in. Then I also look at it as a vote of this caliber to say that these would be meetings of the board is not just a vote. It would have to be a policy, a board policy issue, because if we're making a vote that these are board meetings, that means there's a requirement for a quorum to be there. So that puts it under a policy and not just strictly as a vote, because again, I think Dexter brought that up, and just trying to tie some ends with it, is that I am one for parliamentary procedures and making sure that we do proper representation. And again, I try to go to, I mean, I left a track meet. I try to stay involved, and it isn't whether, you know, it's my child or not. I've had children in many things, and I've had children that weren't in things that you participate and try to get a flavor for. And I'll give you a good example. Nat Hurd, haven't ever had one of my students go through that class. Linda Burlett, yeah, I think I had a child in her class, so I can't. You know, but again, I would caution that if we take a vote on this, that it is really more of a policy, because you are requesting under the and if I'm mischaracterizing it, Carol, tell me, you are requesting it as it to be a meeting of the board. And I think I heard that in the motion, that would become policy, and that would take 2 readings. I want to make sure that I mean.
Okay.
The word meeting wasn't in the motion.
Amy, could you read back the motion by?
Motions that the school board tours each school once per year at a time selected to be convenient to that school's community, such as a PTA meeting or open house.
Thank you.
Or other event, I think I said.
Yeah, but it's asking, I think,
it should say or other
we're
event.
looking for a quorum of the board. Is that, I mean, I want to make sure that you would have to make a...
Implications in that.
Yeah.
So before I have Rebecca and Ann, I just want to take my opportunity to speak on it. And that is, I really can't support this, but I think Rebecca has a great idea in turning, in what we did with at Little Harbor, in turning the opportunity of meeting in the schools into, and this combines kind of both, and I've talked to Ed about the possibility of having the administration work with the PTAs so that for the one time each year that we're in each building, the PTA has a meeting that same evening before us, and then we mingle and talk with them before we have our board meeting, and then invite them to come and stay for the board meeting. You know, so that's, I can't support this particular motion, but Rebecca.
But I think one of the things is trying to separate out being in the schools and meeting with the parents from our actual meetings. You know, they're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to have one to have the other. And, you know, I don't remember any extensive tours or presentations that were school specific. And, you know, because memory is what it is, I went back and I was looking through the agendas and the minutes of the meetings that we've had at, you know, remote locations at the other schools, and there have been non-public sessions beforehand, so on most of them. So I feel like if we wanted to use it as a time to meet with the parents, and then we have this non-public, are they going to stick around for an hour and wait for us, or, you know, and then go into it? So that's something to consider. And the other thing is, you know, if we do want to have it on the same night that we go and we have you know, a tour or a discussion, you know, when there's staff in the buildings, because that's key, that's important, and then we could come here, you know, to a place that works, you know, the audio works, that we're live on Channel 22. So I don't think that these two things are necessarily mutually exclusive.
Okay. Ann?
I really can't support the motion either. I would prefer have our meetings at the schools prior to the board meeting, and I'm kind of looking into a new format of further engagement. Mitch and I had talked about the aspect of the PTA meetings or some other activity, and hopefully not having a non-public that would really take up a lot of the time as well. So that's my position.
Okay. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I understand the strain of adding more time to everyone's schedule. I mean, I think this really boils down to just making sure that we're able to provide access to the meetings that we are having on TV. So, I mean, I think it's a creative way that's being thrown out to say, hey, if this is the concern, maybe we could address it another way. So I hear everyone's concern about just one. We already are pretty tied up with a lot of other subcommittee work and involvement that's going on around the community. It just boils down to, if we are here, I think it's a central location that people can get to. If it's in another location, I think the fact that it's in a good location, that you're able to film it, you're able to put it live on TV, I think that's ultimately the goal that we're trying to get to. So I understand the desire to get there with a number of creative solutions, but if there are ways technically that we're able to accomplish the task at hand, which is really to get things broadcast so that we have that available to the public, I think that's what we're trying to get to.
Thank you.
I might.
Okay, Carol, and then Rebecca, and then we'll call the question.
Yeah, Linda, I just, I'm concerned that maybe I didn't explain my motion sufficiently, but it would not be the board coming to an open house and interacting with the teachers and getting involved in the open house itself and what's happening between the teachers and the parents. It would be simply that you would have parents coming out to go to an event, and we would go there before the event starts, half an hour before, and do our tour before, or we could run our tours while the the open house is going on. But it would not at all be about the school board coming and interacting with the teachers over their open house. It's just using the fact that you have this event and you have parents already, because what the issue we have, Linda, is that when we have our meetings at the schools, very few people show up to our meetings. Very few people show up here. Very few people come out to night meetings. Seniors don't, and a lot of parents don't. And so the idea would be, how do we get an audience? How do we get people who are already coming out? They're already putting their coats on. They're already getting in their cars. And we just capture that, and we just, use that. And I think as a parent, it would be wonderful for me to kill two birds with one stone, be able to meet with my school board and do a tour and meet with my child's teacher. I would see that as a parent as a boon, as a really great thing. And the other thing is, my motion did not say that it had to be at a PTA meeting. It said or other event. Okay. So it wouldn't have to be that if that is the stumbling block. But I want to step back for a second and say that, maybe this isn't the right motion. Maybe it wasn't worded right. But I think the idea of it is good, getting us into the schools in a more meaningful way, getting more engagement, getting more communication, and that's the spirit of the motion. So maybe if the motion isn't worded perfectly or isn't exactly right, maybe we could have a brainstorming session over what does everybody on this board think it means to get into the schools? What do they want? How do they want it to look? What does it involve? When does it take place? And brainstorm and come up with a really great idea that takes us to a better place than where we currently are at.
Thank you. Rebecca.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, holding the meetings like in the gym at Lister Academy was not conducive to an effective meeting at all.
True.
And, I know that we had trouble hearing each other. We had trouble hearing the speakers. The speakers had trouble hearing us. And the people that did come out that night did not come out because we were at Lister Academy. They came out because it was a big agenda item that night, which was the budget. So if we do have the meetings and televise them live from the remote location, you know, we're going to need to consider the cost, or there's going to be cost. And then I think, as Carol mentioned earlier, you know, night meetings are very difficult, and 7 o'clock is the witching hour, and you have bedtime and bath time and homework and dinner and story time and family time, and I think people are really likely to turn on Channel 22. Mm-hmm. I think it gets many more hits than we think it does, and you know, I know that I stream live the city council meetings if there's something on it. So I think the basis is to separate out the being in the schools and getting an idea and a sense of what it is we want to accomplish when we're there, which I don't feel we necessarily do well right now. We could do it better, you know, seeing when the staff is there, seeing when parents are there, and then our meetings are separate from that. Whether it's the same night but a separate location, that's more appropriate for meetings.
Okay. So,
I'm sorry, I just have one other. Some people who I've talked to have suggested to me that we do this during the day, during the school day. They say that we're not getting any sense of what the schools are like because the kids aren't there, and the kids are the essence of the school system. So I want to put that out there, again, under the heading of I think we need to brainstorm. I'm hearing different ideas of different things people want to do, different ways they think it'll look, different times when people think it should happen. I think we should have a brainstorming, and I think we should come up with what is the best possible way for the Portsmouth School Board to be in the schools.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second, discussion, and so it's time to call a question. So could I impose Amy one more time to read the motion?
Chelman motions that the school board tours each school once per year at a time selected to be convenient to that school's community, such as a PTA meeting, open house, or other event.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
1,
Aye.
2, 3. All opposed?
Shouldn't we have a roll call? Shouldn't we have a roll call on that?
I don't
it's
know.
non-policy.
The roll call for that particular.
Okay.
So, Ann, could you pick up?
Consideration of approval. Okay. I move that all school board meetings be either televised or recorded.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Rebecca.
I need clarification on what televised or recorded means. Is it going to be...
Televised means televised here in City Hall for the first meeting of our first meeting of the month, which is the second Tuesday, and the next meeting, hopefully in a school, would be televised and put on Channel 22.
So it would be archived
or on the web.
At a later date.
It will be what we had done in the past. It would be recorded during in the building, wherever it is, and then the guys would take it back, and it's scheduled to run a number of times throughout the week on Channel 22, and it would be digitized and made available as streaming online.
So I still feel like there's more information that I need. You know, how much is this going to cost, and should we be spending this money when there's a no-cost option to do it here? The audio quality, you know, everybody has consistently talked about that, right. And it's been mentioned that it can be made better. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, well, if we had better audio, then why weren't we doing that in the first place? And it still doesn't address the fact that, you know, like Lister Academy gym is just not
another room.
Is just not conducive. So I just, and you know, the lag time between, I wonder what the lag time is, you know, when it will be available online, when it will be broadcast. I feel like I have a lot more questions, and to me televised, and I think actually the dictionary definition of televised is to be broadcast.
Well, what is broadcast?
On a television.
On a television?
On a television
Correct.
at the time.
No. Not necessarily live. Televised means on television. But I think your other questions, I don't have an answer to them, but I know for the few months that we were taping all of the other meetings we had, not in City Hall, but in buildings, it was run 2 to 3 times throughout that week.
Yeah.
So if we met on a Tuesday night, it was run at least 2 or 3 times between Tuesday and the weekend.
So, and do we have a cost? I mean, in this climate,
we had a ballpark.
It was about $180 to $185, I believe, was the
Per
going rate
meeting?
per meeting.
So we're
If it was,
About times
and I
6.
guess I should qualify to say that there is a, I'm trying to remember what the time window was. If you go over that,
Right.
then it's extra.
Okay. Hang on. So I have Kent and then Carol and then Lisa.
I just
Okay.
had a point of clarification on
Point of
that, just from the JBC.
Okay.
For example, the JBC is televising a meeting on May 5th. It'll be rebroadcast on May 8th, and it's $75 unless you go over that time limit, which I can't remember what it is, and then it goes up to $180.
Okay, so 75.
So, okay. Kent.
Just a couple of thoughts, clarifications, and so forth. First of all, it's been said a number of times, what's the cost? We're being filmed tonight. This is not a free deal. This costs us, so when we do the calculation of whatever that would be, I think you say $180, we're not getting charged for it, but the city taxpayers are paying for tonight to have it broadcast. So you must subtract out that amount of money out of the cost, because wherever that money comes from, you're already spending money tonight when you ever are televised. So I think this has been a very big misnomer that somehow we've got this for free. It's not a free deal here. Second of all, I think there are a number of times that you can work with Alan Brady. If, during supper time is a great time for us to be on prior to American Idol, which everybody's probably going to watch, and then they flick back to us. Maybe we can go on at the 6 o'clock news time or something that makes, relative sense. Alan's very accommodating that way. We do this with the sporting events. It loops at a certain times. It's a looping technology you don't want me touching. Lastly, I was highly disappointed that when we had the meeting at the high school a couple of weeks ago, retreat, we had a meeting there, we discussed this, and that I know for a fact, I'm not sure what minutes may show of this, but I heard a unanimous from all board members that attended that, and I believe everybody was there, my memory serves me right, that it was unanimous that everybody wanted it televised. And when I read articles and misconceptions that are presented to people out there, I am pissed. People should not do that. That is a lack of energy towards other board members, and I think both Lisa and Leslie are owed an apology through the community to have been represented that they did not want this televised. They never said that, nor was a vote ever taken. So I strongly feel when this type of information is misled out there, the responsibility comes back to us as a board to correct that. So that.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that as well.
That being said, thank you.
Carol.
When you say televised, you could have televised live, or you could have televised not live.
Correct.
And the motion doesn't
Televised or recorded.
It says televised or
Televised
recorded
or
was what I had
recorded.
written down. Televised
Right,
or
or
recorded.
recorded.
But televised begs the question, because is it televised live or is it televised? Because it could be televised and not be televised live.
It will be on television. It
It's-
will not be I do not believe the city has the capability to remotely have a live broadcast from buildings throughout the city.
See, I thought that we did.
At this time, we don't. That's correct.
I could be wrong, but I don't believe we have that capability. In fact, tomorrow night at the high school, when we have the public hearing,
Right.
it's going to be recorded and aired at another
And
time.
I think the reason is because the HDC is scheduled for tomorrow night. And so they can't broadcast it live because it's not open. There's somebody else already broadcasting.
No, we
at
don't.
that time. But
we don't
I
have
believe we have the
capability.
capability. I mean, Ed, maybe you could clarify.
I don't know the
I
answer.
thought you said that there
absolutely know
was
the
a-
answer to that, Carol. I tell you, the high school does not have it. We have tried it with the sporting events and so forth. We have tried
Okay.
it with meetings. There is no way other than here, and you can call Alan Brady tomorrow morning and clarify that, but there is absolutely, except for this facility we're in, you cannot do it live. They have recording-type cameras, and at this time, there has always been hope to be able to patch the buildings in.
Thank you. Lisa.
Oh, I was just going to say, in addition to having them rebroadcast on Channel 22, the meetings that will be televised either live or taped and televised at a later time, all of those will be available online 24/7,
Right.
which I think is very helpful because, as Rebecca said, you know, this hour is the witching hour, and I don't know what happens in your house, but we're not sitting around watching Channel 22 during the witching hour. So, so I think that for a lot of people, and we have that access on some of our meetings, and at times most of our meetings, but I think to have all of our meetings fully accessible 24/7 so that people, you know, who can't make it out on Tuesday nights between 7 and 10, they can get access to all of those meetings.
So just my thoughts on this. The audio quality has always been an issue for us. And I've spoken to the guys in the booth, and I have a call in to Alan Brady. I know that based on even what I see here, the capabilities of doing better miking live at a remote setting. I mean, multiple miking into a video camera. It's not rocket science. It's easy to do. I believe the city has the equipment. If they don't, you know, I believe they even have a mixer. So I'll talk to Alan about that, because the issue really is the audio quality, and I think that can be solved. The live question, I think we can get an answer to that from Alan Brady, but I've never heard anybody suggest that remote live broadcast, remote live television was a capability of the city. But the other thing really that I just wanted to address is that this comes up, and I support, you know, having all of the meetings recorded and or televised, live when we're here, recorded and broadcast multiple times throughout the week when we're not here. The thing that people keep talking about when they use these terminology is that it would help us be more open and transparent. And I actually take a little bit of an exception to that, because first of all, I believe we meet all the legal requirements for what the school board has to do. You know, we have meetings and they're posted and they're public and the public is invited to come. I understand the argument about people not being able to come here. That's really a question of convenience, and I believe that we can meet that requirement that people are asking of us, that we make it as convenient as possible for them to see and hear what the school board is doing. And I also think televised gets a little bit overblown because that does not meet our legal requirements. For example, if we were to have all of our school board meetings at Little Harbor Boardroom televised live, but nobody could come in the room because there's no room in the room to have people, but they were live and they were televised, I do not believe that would meet our legal responsibility as a school board. So televised is one issue. We can satisfy that without any problem. You know, that the fact that people think that we're not open and transparent because we're not on television, I don't accept that one bit at all. People are invited to come. They don't come. I know they don't come. There's absolutely, well, there's one person sitting in the audience right here and two press people who wish they were home. So this will be the last comment, and then we'll call the question.
I think what, you know, you hit it right on is that if we did it live from Little Harbor, there wouldn't be room for anybody. And I think that goes back to the question of, you know, appropriate meeting space and separating out visiting the schools from having our meetings. And having a good meeting location. And if we have all our meetings here, then we don't even need to discuss this.
Okay. So
I just have a couple of comments. I fear that this board is going in the direction of an easy out. You know, the idea of, gee, we're going to videotape these meetings and put them on the web. So, you know, we're being open and transparent. You know, how can anybody complain? What I would like to see this board do is set our standards higher, not be average, not be just, okay, we're being open and transparent, we're videotaping the meetings. Take it up a notch and be televised live from Channel 22, which also can be broadcast on the web. And what happens there, Mitch, is that you're getting your broadest group of people. We don't know how many people are watching this tonight. And I know when I was out campaigning that a lot of senior citizens told me that they watched Channel 22 and that they recognized me from Channel 22. And I think it is a shame, will be a shame if this board loses the opportunity to directly communicate with those people who we most need to get on board with our budget. I just think we should set high standards. I think we should do the most open and transparent. As long as it's both on the web as well as on Channel 22, how can you criticize that? How can you say there's anything wrong with that? And I take issue with a couple of things Kent said, but one of them is that it doesn't cost the school department anything extra if we televise live on Channel 22. I think it's a great opportunity. The other thing that Kent said that I have to disagree with is I think we need to be really careful how we use the term televised and what we mean by that. There's been a division in this board between the folks who want to videotape at the schools and the folks who want to televise live from Channel 22. And I think there's different terminology that's used. But I have no apologies about anything that I have said with regard to this issue. And I would have to say, since Lisa, I believe, brought it up, she said that we often, was the word, tour schools. And I find that interesting because I've reviewed all of the minutes back to 2009, and I don't see a single solitary tour. And I see almost no presentations, and I have never seen a pre-meeting between the school board and parents that has been apparently, supposedly taking place without it being entered in the minutes anywhere. So I think I think it's unfortunate that there's been some dialogue that's been less than constructive. And I think that this issue is a very important issue. I think a lot of people are looking at what we're doing. It's not just any old day that we get the former mayor sending us an email. It is not just any old day that we get city council members sending us emails. It's not any old day that we get lots and lots of emails and phone calls. And I haven't heard anybody say that they got a phone call and an email and they've got it to share with us and it says, don't broadcast live from Channel 22. That's a bad idea. Don't do that. Haven't heard that. I haven't gotten that phone call. I haven't gotten that email. And I think it's interesting because during the budget process, I only got a handful of phone calls, and I've gotten a lot more of that on this issue than I did on the budget. So this is a big issue for this community. People are looking very closely at what this board does and how they handle this situation, and it will say reams about who we are, how we handle this situation.
Dexter.
So I'm not going to predict the future. So to me, this is an incredibly divisive issue that I see, in fact, fracturing this group. I mean, you can just see it with the comments going back and forth. And it's unfortunate because there's no need to have that happen, but clearly it's happening. And one of the things that personally I've taken pride of since particularly the board before me when Mitch is that this group has worked very well as a group. And it would be a shame, regardless of which way this decision goes, that somehow this issue fractures this group. And so I do worry a lot that the passion on both sides is not commensurate, I think, with the issue. I mean, I'm not convinced that this is the number one issue in the public. I believe it's the budget. And I would hope it's the budget. But having said that, I actually think we should televise all our meetings to just take the issue off the table. And if we need to figure out how to get into the schools, then we figure that out. But to me, we should televise them live on Tuesday. So it's make a date on Tuesday. And I agree with Lisa. The reality is I'm not convinced in this 24/7 TiVo world that a lot of people are watching TV live. They're shifting to make it convenient to them. So I believe, in fact, a lot of the public is shifting this meeting to make it convenient to them, and they're streaming it. But in my mind, just to take the notion, the perception by some that we're not transparent, which I find offensive, by the way. I find it very offensive that we'd be even accused of that. But to eliminate that as an issue, then I'd support televising
the motion.
Every meeting live.
I don't know if technology exists for that.
My point is, then that would mean that the meetings would have to be here. I understand the technology limits that.
Okay, well then...
So that's where I come down.
But that's not the motion on the table
I understand, and it's awkward because the way the motions are structured is that it's difficult to get at. It's hard to parse that apart, given the technology. So you almost can't get at an up or down answer, and that's a problem. But that's where I'm at, regardless of the motion.
That's fine. I don't know what, Linda, yes.
I just wanted to make a comment, an observation, actually. You've spent 45 minutes debating whether you're going to be televised or not televised, and I'm embarrassed that that's been the conversation for 45 minutes. No one has once said, if you're here to work on the best quality education for the kids in the city of Portsmouth, I'm not sure that this is the best way to spend 45 minutes of your time. We didn't spend 45 minutes listening to those fabulous trips from the French students and the Spanish students. We didn't. The principals didn't spend 45 minutes telling us about anything. And I'm going to spend 2 minutes telling you about this wonderful little kid in my class who's going to get published in Stone Soup in case you missed the picture in the paper. So that's 2 minutes. So now you have a little synopsis. But I'm embarrassed that it's 45 minutes and you've just been gnashing around. So I think you need to move it. Move on.
Thank you. Okay, so people can vote the way they feel. These are actually, I'm surprised these are pretty emotional issues. But the motion on the table right now is that all school board meetings will be televised and or recorded, which, just to clarify, which would mean that if they cannot broadcast live from any of the remote buildings, then they will be recorded on videotape and played back at another time and streamed live at another time. That's the way the motion stands right now. So I'd like to call the question.
Can I make a motion to amend?
I just called the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just want to make a motion to amend, weren't you?
Well, I just called the question. So the question really is on the table to broadcast to have all the school board meetings televised and or recorded. So all in favor of having all of the school board meetings televised and or recorded, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nobody's opposed. Thank you. So now the question is locations. So I would entertain a motion to figure out how to solve that question. Well, any ideas? Ann, did you have?
Well, I would move that the fourth Tuesday of each month, which is our second meeting, that for 6 times that they be at one of our schools.
Second.
Second.
Okay, further discussion. I think it's important for people to keep in mind we have 18 school board meetings every year. We're talking about 1/3 of those meetings not being here in City Hall, that they would be in the buildings. I think there are people on the board who feel very strongly about the fact that they'd like to meet in the buildings. I hear a number of people suggest tonight that we should meet in the buildings, and it's better to meet during the day when there's things going on and school's in session and students are around, and I totally agree, but I don't know about you, but I have a job, and I just cannot do that. So that doesn't make sense to me. And the way I think about it as well is that, you know, sort of overseeing and managing, working with the district to oversee the buildings that are under our charge, I feel it's important to be physically in the building. It doesn't matter to me if there's nobody there. And oftentimes there's nobody here in City Hall. But I think having it covered by recording and televising and putting everything online so that people can keep abreast of what the school district is doing, keeping in mind that we will be in this room 12 out of the 18 times out of the year. In my role as chair, you know, and Dexter, I thought I'd like to thank him for that. But in my role as chair, I really feel that it's important that we try to, as best as possible, to work together as a group. And in terms of being, quote unquote, like a great compromiser, I think that there's a win-win here. For us and for the community, everything will be available online and on television. Some will be live, some will not be live. They'll all be broadcast at least 2 to 3 times a week. But from my perspective, this kind of a compromise keeps many people on the board a little bit happy. Everybody gets a little bit of what they really think is a major issue. Everything will be televised. That helps address the concerns of those who want to see us on television all the time. And those people who feel strongly that meeting in the buildings is a worthwhile thing to do keeps them happy as well. I think, and I think anything we can do to help the board work better together for the sake of the children, which is why we're all here, in my mind, is a win-win all around. So, Rebecca.
I will not support this motion because all of the emails and phone calls I've received have asked that we be here in City Hall. Mm-hmm. It's from parents, former mayor, community members at large that don't necessarily have children involved right now. And I haven't heard anyone say that they really like coming to our meetings when they're at schools. And so I think, we've been asked to have our meetings here, and a solution was offered tonight to go into the schools in a meaningful way. And I just don't see how going into a school and holding our meetings there is necessarily the best and most effective way for us to hold our meetings.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I don't have a whole lot to add to what the chair had stated, but we are the conduit between the schools and the community, and I am one of the ones that feels pretty strongly that we do need to keep a presence in the school buildings. That's our responsibility. I've been in education. I've, helped to run some of the parent organizations in the schools. And it's always, how do you get more people here? And the answer that we usually get to is, we need to go there to them. And so for tutoring groups or PTA meetings, the more those groups tried to get out into the communities that we're trying to serve, the better we did. So coming from that background, I think it's very strong. And I know I participated in the study circles for redistricting, many years ago. And it was pivotal to take the tours of the different elementary schools when we were in that process. Just going in and seeing the building. And ideally, yes, everyone could go in during the day and see it with the students learning. But that's not ideal for a lot of reasons. And I think you do get a lot of messages from going into even an empty building. And I do want to add, there are other boards who meet here during this time slot in the city, who I don't know that we've talked to about bumping them, but I worry about us and the way, we kind of feel that we can do that without having that conversation first. So that's all.
Thank you. So I appreciate the notion that there have been many emails that have come in the last few days. I've actually talked to many people who, once the clarification was, and I've heard from other board members as well, once the clarification was made that in fact we're moving towards recording and televising and making available online all school board meetings, people really seem to have less of a concern about meeting, particularly here, which I think some board members at our retreat actually said the setup of this table is just not that conducive sometimes because you can't always see everybody's face. So in any case,
That's right.
Okay. So in any case, I guess we'll call the question. So all those in favor of having 6 school board meetings throughout the year in the school building, but they will be recorded and or televised at a later date and streamed, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Keep your hands up so I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, all opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, passes. And I think we will work with the administration to make sure that we ask them to work with the principals and the PTAs in all the buildings, that when the school board meetings are held there, that we actually do have an event next year. So that would be 6 times, and it would be an opportunity to meet with parents from the schools and people who live in the community nearby who want to come. Thank you. Moving on.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask you to, with the resignation of Gwen Baker as the choral director, we now have an additional teacher opening, and Gina Connolly is one of the 39 contracts that were held, and rather than see her lose or go elsewhere, I'd nominate her for a teaching position this evening.
So moved.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
In your packet, and you can do this collectively, the 3 remaining job descriptions we had not advanced at the last regular meeting of the board: the Director of Informational Technology, School Nutrition, and most importantly, the teacher job description, so that we can begin the process of evaluating against the job description.
Move them as a block, please.
Okay. Sure.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I did have one correction on one of them.
Good.
Which is, it's a little confusing. The Director of Information Technology up at the top is the title, and yet in the job goal, it says the Director of Educational Technology.
Oh, thank
so
you.
So if you could just clarify which it is.
Yeah.
So just Director of Technology.
Right.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other comments? Okay. All in favor of accepting?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Committees. Okay. The Joint Building Committee.
I've just been told to make it quick. So,
not by me. Take your time.
I understand. So, there are a couple of actually important things I want to talk about, and I'll ask Lisa and Leslie to chime in. So, the JBC continues to make good progress. We're working on schematic design in the middle school. We're working on the what is formally being referred to as the Granite Street Field. That's the field at the old Wentworth School, forever known as the Granite Street Field. And also the Portsmouth High School turf field. And what I can tell you, and we're going to talk a little bit more about schematic design where we are, but that the 2 fields are underway, and we're on schedule to have the Granite Street Field playable by the summer of 2011, and for the Portsmouth High School turf field to be playable by September 6, 2010. I mean, the month, the immediately after Labor Day.
Wow.
No sooner, given the schedule, but they feel good about that.
Wow.
So there's a couple of key dates that this board needs to understand and I hope participate in. The first one is April 28th. And I'm going to pass out a flyer, and the JBC on the 28th is having a public information session, a formal meeting, but a public information center at the Portsmouth High School, Little Harbor, from 5 to 6. Little Theater. Portsmouth High School, Little Theater, from 5 to 6:30 p.m. The public is, we want to have an aggressive communication campaign to invite the public to that meeting. Although all of our meetings are public, just like other board meetings, people are busy. It's important that we have the community come out for this meeting. It's an opportunity to meet the project team, so that means the members of the JBC, the architects, JCJ, and the construction manager, Gil Bain. At that meeting, JCJ will preview the schematic design that we have right now. The JBC has not voted on that schematic design, but it wants to present the status of where we're at the April 28th meeting, and then to ask questions, to answer questions that the public might have. So we encourage all of you folks on this board to attend that meeting. The second key dates are, as we drive through the design process, early in mid-May, the JBC is going to be hearing and recommending the construction phasing of the middle school project. And you'll recall when we looked at that initially, there were multiple phases so that we could keep the children on site during the entire construction. That was at the direction of this school board. And I'll remind you that this school board has the authority of the decision-making for any phasing program, since that potentially affects the education program of the middle school. So at the JBC's May 19th meeting, JCJ and Gilbane will be presenting for consideration the phasing plan. And that phasing plan will include detailed costs associated. They will present several options, and the plan will include costs associated with each option, timelines associated with each option. I'm not sure if it'll include potential impact of students, or I'm sure it will in the sense of where they're going to be during each phase. And they will be recommending a particular, I believe they'll be recommending a particular option. And at the May 19th meeting, the JBC will vote to recommend a particular option to present to the school board for approval. So here's where it gets tricky. Given the schedule of the JBC, which is very tight, what we're going to ask the school board is at their May 25th, at our May 25th meeting, to take action on that recommendation. Now, I understand that traditionally we have items under consideration for 2 meetings by practice. We usually hear at one meeting, and then we decide at our next meeting. Given our schedule, though, to accommodate that pushes that decision out in June, which frankly is too late for the JBC. So what we're asking is that, one, this group attend the May 19th JBC meeting, so you will hear, as the same time the JBC hears, the presentation from our construction manager and our architects on the various options, and you'll see the JBC's consideration, and you'll hear their questions, you'll hear the answers, and you'll hear the deliberation. And then at our school board meeting on May 25th, we will again present that. I would recommend, in fact, that we have the architects and the construction manager actually participate in that presentation.
At the meeting.
At our meeting on the 25th. But I do ask this board that they make a decision on the 25th so that we can remain on schedule as a JBC.
Okay.
And that 25th is a regularly scheduled meeting of the board. So, no, the 19th is a new one. The 25th is a meeting that we have scheduled. We're asking you to come to the JBC meeting on May 19th at Little Harbor at 6:30.
Yes. Correct? Yes, that is correct.
And this is Little Harbor.
Though perhaps
the 19th. Maybe we should think about
a different venue so that it's more, it's bigger.
Okay.
All right. So we will communicate the location of the May 19th meeting.
Yes.
But it will be at 6:30.
Yes.
We'll check with the 11th.
So some important. So I guess in sum, what I'd say is that we're making terrific progress. I will say we have terrific partners that we're working with, and we have some very important dates that are coming up that we need both the public and this board to participate in to help get us through. So Lisa or Leslie, do you have anything to add to that?
I think the only thing I would add is the sustainability piece that we've kind of walked through. Ed, maybe you can speak better to it. Walk through the chips. There's a list, the chips, and there's a list of credits that we can get. And so the team has walked through the list of credits and identified the ones that they believe, we'll be able to get, and that it looks like we will be in good shape for that.
Any questions?
Sorry. There was a lot of information.
That's important.
Okay. Thank you, Dexter.
Sure.
A report from the policy committee? Anything this time out?
Well, the policy committee did meet last Thursday, reviewed a number of policies. I know Leslie worked with Attorney Dwyer and reviewed the initial drafts of those policies, so we'll be bringing them forward at the first May meeting for a first reading.
Okay. And the facilities committee?
No updates unless you have a couple.
I guess the big thing out of that was that we are hoping to get the next $25,000 from the city CIP in order to fund a facility analysis of the elementary schools. I believe we've gotten $25,000 already, and hopefully by the end of this budget season we'll have another $25,000, and that facility analysis, the administration is prepared to go out, with bids to get a consulting group to come in, and they would review and document mechanical, plumbing, electrical systems, building codes, and accessibility codes. We would find out if the facilities are code compliant, whether they meet current standards, and if the spaces meet Department of Education rules and guidelines to determine facility classroom capacity. And in that way, getting that knowledge as a base will allow the K-5 standing committee that we have to kind of move forward.
Okay.
I think also in the meeting we had some discussions both on the storm damages and so forth that we're waiting for federal reimbursements on about, I think he had said, I was surprised it was only like $8,000, I believe was the quoted amount, but again, Ken Lynchy is waiting for that. We also had discussion because as things move for the middle school, and one being the field, and we've passed along to the JBC is soil testing of that, and I talked with Dexter, and I know that that's going to be done because that has had fill in it way back in the late 60s and early 70s. But then we got into the discussion of, and I think it's one that we do need as a facilities committee to bring back, is that it was always the anticipation, myself included, that there was going to be a fairly large savings on the all-purpose field for mowing, maintenance, and so forth. All statistics right now, according to Ken Lynchy, show that that may not be true. It won't cost us any more, but with the amount of lining and configuration, the beading, and the water, you actually do have to put water on it to keep it from deteriorating and so forth, that savings for that field is not going to be a total savings of what it would have cost to lime, feed it, and grass it, and so forth. So that's a little bit surprising, learning as you go on something like this, but I think we do need to have that come back so people have an understanding that it does have a maintenance cost to it, quite similar to as it does when it has to be mowed and so forth.
Thank you. Okay, there's no other committees, but I'll just report that the technology committee, we're meeting this week on Thursday, and we're going to begin the process of trying to look at hiring a consulting firm to do some technology audits for the district, so we get a handle on what we have and how we're using what we have. So just two quick things before we adjourn. One is I'd like to ask Phil. He had talked about the bricks, and I know there's a deadline for the fundraising coming up for the landscaping at the high school, so if you can remind everybody about that.
Right. The deadline is approaching. It is due as of Thursday, so for anyone that wants to get their brick ready, just send it in to the school and see to that it is sent to Deborah Quinn, PHS Student Council 2010. We've already sold 400 bricks, and we're confident we'll probably sell 500 by the end of the week. So thank you for your support and your continued support in this effort. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
What is the web address for the Portsmouth High School Student Council? I know it's not.
It is phsstudentcouncil.com.
Okay.
Or you can friend us on Facebook.
Okay.
We are on Facebook, so.
And you can get an order form for the bricks if you go to that website.
Exactly, yeah.
Nothing personal, I just don't need any more friends.
No, that is okay.
And the last thing would be,
Well, I just wanted to share that the city provided copies of the budget book for the school board to bring on the 21st for the workshop session, so you have that.
Right.
And Amy also made copies of John Bohanko's, the city manager's introductory pages as well, so just that's why it's there, and to bring it with you when we have our workshop session a week from now.
Mr. Chairman?
Kent, yes.
I know that tomorrow night, and I'm hoping that people are watching tonight, that they get out to the public hearing both tomorrow night and again on May 10th. to support it. I was very fortunate to meet with both the WAVE and the SIP group, and they are very child conscious to making sure that we provide services. In saying that, watching last night's meeting with the City Council, and that, if things do not go our way, and we may not know till June, I would love for this board to, sooner than later, by the next board meeting, schedule a budget work session for ourselves to look and prioritize what we would have to do at 0.5% or 1%, whatever it is, because I think the sooner we can have that feeling, we can work with our faculty and staff and letting them know. But again, if we wait till after June 7th when they vote, I think that puts us in a very small time frame to do the right thing. I appreciate what the superintendent brought to us, but as a board member and as you board members, we need to look at that. That is our decision, and I think there are other areas I would like to venture if unfortunately, the City Council were to do anything else. I hope they don't. I think it's a reasonable budget, but again, to the superintendent and to the chairman, I would love to schedule a work session the sooner than later when we have a better indication.
So the next board meeting is May 11th?
May 11th.
Yes. So that would be the one. Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to schedule that, yeah. And that will, fortunately, that's the day after the second public hearing of the
right.
of the City Council.
Yeah, but we need
or
to
unfortunately,
plan
depending on who you are.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. We should have that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Also, can you put on the agenda for that night to talk about the sort of budget subcommittee that we had talked about? And sort of getting
finance subcommittee.
Well, that's going to be that finance committee is going to be that and looking at the long-term goals.
Well, that was a potential draft,
right? Okay.
That's going to be it. Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Over.